Lena had lived in that small town her entire life, yet most people barely knew she existed. She walked quietly, spoke softly, and moved with such care that it was easy for others to overlook her. She had been blind since birth, but she never wanted people to feel sorry for her. What she wanted, more than anything, was to understand the world in her own way. While other children learned by seeing things around them, Lena learned by listening. Sounds were her colors. Vibrations were her shapes. And music to her was the clearest language in the world. Every afternoon after school, when the hallways emptied and voices faded, Lena slowly made her way to the music room. She knew the route by heart: 12 steps from the classroom door to the hallway. Turn right, then count 5 more steps until her fingers touched the cool metal of the music room door. Inside that room stood the old-school piano. Most students ignored it because it was scratched, out of tune, and far from beautiful. But for Lena, it was the heart of her world. She ran her hands over the wooden edges every day, tracing each mark, each dent, as if reading a story only she could understand. Then she would lift the lid and place her fingers gently on the keys. She could not see the black and white pattern, but she felt it, the smoothness of the ivory, the slight difference in height. When she pressed a key and heard the soft note echo in the room, it felt like the piano was greeting her again. The teachers knew she liked music, but only one person truly understood her connection to it: Mrs. Carter, the school's kind and patient music teacher. She always noticed Lena sitting at the piano alone. Instead of stopping her, she simply smiled and said, "Play as long as you want." And Lena did. Every day. Every afternoon, without ever missing a moment. But the other students were not as kind. They whispered when she passed by. They laughed at the fact that a blind girl wanted to play the piano. Some even said things like, "What's the point? She can't even see the keys." Lena pretended not to hear them, but the words felt like tiny stones thrown at her heart. Still, she returned to the music room because the piano did not laugh at her. The piano did not judge her. It simply waited for her, offering comfort in the form of sound. She practiced by listening, not by reading music sheets. She would press a key and memorize the note. Then she would press another and another, slowly forming simple melodies. At first, her fingers were clumsy and unsure, but over time they grew confident. She learned to feel the distance between notes, to sense how hard or soft to press, and to follow her heart instead of her eyes. She created small tunes, nothing grand, nothing complicated, but each one carried a piece of her world within it. Sometimes, Mrs. Carter stood quietly in the corner, watching her. She never interrupted. She simply listened, amazed at how a girl who had never seen sunlight, colors, or written notes could still create music that sounded so full of emotion. "You have a gift, Lena," she would say gently. A very rare one. But Lena always shook her head, not believing it. To her, music felt natural, like breathing. It didn't feel like a gift, it felt like survival. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rumbled outside, Lena sat at the piano feeling the vibrations of each sound. She could tell it was raining by the thin, delicate tapping on the windows. She found beauty even in that. She tried to copy the rhythm of the rain with her fingers, creating a soft, repeated melody that matched the weather. The piano notes blended with the storm, and it felt almost magical. For a moment, Lena forgot about everything else, the teasing, the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible. All that existed was sound, but outside that room, no one knew this side of her. To most people, she was just the quiet, blind girl who walked slowly and kept to herself. They didn't know about the music inside her, waiting to come out. They didn't know how strongly she felt things, how deeply she listened, or how much she dreamed. That was the truth about Lena. She wasn't the girl people thought she was. She wasn't weak. She wasn't lost. She simply lived in a world made of sound instead of sight. And in that world, she was stronger than anyone could imagine. She was only waiting for one moment, one chance to let the world hear what she'd been carrying in her heart all along. Lena's dream began quietly, almost like the gentle notes she played on the old piano. She never told anyone about it, not even Mrs. Carter. It felt too precious, too fragile, like a small flame she had to protect from the wind. Her dream was simple yet enormous. She wanted to become a pianist. Not just someone who played for herself, but someone who shared music with others. Someone who touched hearts with sound, the way music had touched hers since she was a child. Most people around her would laugh if they knew. They already whispered behind her back just for practicing on an old, broken piano. If they heard she wished to be a real pianist, they would think she was crazy. But Lena didn't care. Dreams didn't need eyes, only courage. And she had more courage than anyone noticed. Every morning, before school started, she sat on her bed and imagined what it would be like to play on a real stage. She imagined the smooth floor beneath her shoes, the quiet breathing of the audience waiting to listen, the warmth of the stage lights she could not see but could feel. She imagined the piano large, perfect, powerful. She imagined placing her hands on the keys and letting the music inside her flow freely, as if the whole world was listening. But imagining was the easy part. Reality was different. Her schoolmates often talked about their futures: engineers, doctors, artists, athletes. Whenever Lena walked past them with her white cane, their voices lowered, as if her presence made them uncomfortable. Some thought she couldn't hear their whispers. They didn't realize that a blind person hears everything more clearly. They didn't know how loud their doubts sounded to her. She can't even see the piano. How can she ever be a musician? She should think of something else. But Lena didn't stop dreaming. She practiced every day, repeating the same melodies until her fingers memorized them, the way other children memorized colors. She learned to identify the smallest changes in sound, the tiny difference between a soft press and a firm one, the exact moment a note blended into another, the way the piano breathed in silence. Her ears became her eyes. Her heart became her guide. Mrs. Carter often wondered how Lena's music felt so alive. Once, after listening to her play a tune filled with surprising emotion, she asked gently, "Where did you learn to play like that?" Lena smiled in her quiet way and replied, "I listen." That was the truth. She listened to everything. To footsteps, to laughter, to sadness in someone's voice, to the wind brushing against the roof, to the rain tapping like fingers on a window. She stored all those sounds inside her like a secret collection, turning each one into a feeling she could play on the piano. But the rest of the world couldn't see that. They only saw a blind girl sitting at an old piano. They didn't know that each note she played came from a place deeper than sight could ever reach. One day, while walking home from school, Lena heard music coming from a shop speaker. The sound was rich and powerful, the kind of music that makes your chest tighten. She stopped, focusing on every single note. A stranger passing by said proudly, "That's Adrian Cole, the world-famous pianist. He's the best." The name stayed in Lena's mind like an echo. She had never heard anyone play like that. The music reminded her of a waterfall, strong, unstoppable, beautiful. She longed to meet someone like him, someone who lived inside the world of music she dreamed about. She imagined asking him questions, learning from him, hearing his hands create wonders. But she also knew the truth. Someone like Adrian Cole lived in a world far away, grand stages, shining awards, people who admired him everywhere he went. In that world, someone like Lena didn't exist. Still, her dream didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. She wanted to become good enough that someday, somehow, she would play music people could feel the way she had felt Adrian Cole's performance. Not to impress anyone. Not to prove anything. Simply because music was the only way. She knew how to show the world who she really was. And even though her dream felt too big for the small town she lived in, Lena held onto it tightly, like a treasure. She had no idea that life was preparing a moment, an unexpected moment, that would bring her dream closer than she ever imagined. News in Lena's school usually traveled slowly, but that morning it spread like a spark landing on dry grass. Students rushed through the halls, talking loudly, their voices filled with excitement. Even though Lena could not see the crowd gathering near the notice board, she could hear the sudden change in the air, the buzzing, the gasps, the amazed whispers bouncing off the walls. She moved closer, guided by the sharp sound of students' shoes tapping quickly on the floor. Someone said in a loud, excited voice, "Adrian Cole is coming here." Another added, "He's doing a concert and a masterclass in our town." Can you believe it? Lena stopped walking. For a moment, she wondered if she had heard wrong. Adrian Cole? The same pianist she listened to that day outside the shop? The one whose music felt like it came from a place beyond the world. She listened again. "Yes, Adrian Cole." Another student repeated. "He chose our town for his charity tour. He'll teach a masterclass to a few students at our school." Lena's heart fluttered like a frightened bird and a hopeful bird at the same time. She couldn't see the announcement pinned on the board, but she could feel the excitement vibrating through the walls. She turned slowly, unsure whether to walk toward the board or run away before someone pushed her aside. But before she took another step, a familiar gentle hand touched her arm. "Lena," Mrs. Carter said softly, "I was looking for you. I knew you'd want to hear about this." Lena nodded, though she wasn't sure what she felt yet: joy, fear, disbelief, or all of them at once. Mrs. Carter guided her to a quieter corner and explained everything. "Adrian Cole is holding a masterclass right here at our school," she said. "Any student can sign up to audition for a chance to play for him." Lena swallowed. "Play for him?" "Yes." Mrs. Carter's voice was calm but filled with excitement. "Anyone, including you." The words hit Lena like a sudden beam of warm light. But instead of feeling confident, she felt the room tilt slightly. A tiny part of her wanted to run straight to the sign-up sheet and write her name. But a much bigger part of her felt smaller than ever. "Me?" Lena whispered. "Mrs. Carter." "I don't think you should audition," Mrs. Carter interrupted gently but firmly. "You have as much right as anyone." Lena bit her lip. She remembered the way students whispered about her every day. How they laughed behind her back. How they doubted her. She imagined their faces if she stepped forward to sign up. She imagined their shocked, mocking laughter. "What if they make fun of me?" Lena finally said. Mrs. Carter squeezed her hand. "Let me tell you something, Lena. People laugh at things they don't understand. But that doesn't mean you stop being who you are." Lena stayed silent. "Besides," Mrs. Carter added softly, "you have a gift. And maybe it's time the world sees it, even if the world starts with just one person." The idea of playing for Adrian Cole felt as impossible as touching the stars. Yet, the thought sent a warm current through her chest. He was the reason she felt music differently now. His performance outside the shop had changed something inside her. It made her want to grow, but performing for him? That felt terrifying. She took a deep breath and asked the one question sitting quietly in her heart. "Mrs. Carter, do you really think I can do it?" "I don't think," Mrs. Carter replied. "I know." Those words settled inside Lena like a seed finding good soil. Later that day, as the crowd around the sign-up sheet finally thinned, Lena approached the board slowly. She could feel students staring. Some whispered, "What is she doing?" Others giggled softly. Her hand shook slightly as she touched the paper taped to the wall. She felt the cool texture and traced the lines where names were written. She couldn't read them, of course, but she felt the weight of the moment, with Mrs. Carter guiding her hand. She wrote her name, Lena Hart. The whispering behind her grew louder, but she didn't turn around. She simply stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, letting the moments sink into her heart. When she walked away, she felt something new inside her, not confidence, not strength, not yet, but something close. Hope. And she didn't know it yet. But signing her name on that list was the first step toward a moment that would change her life, test her courage, and show the world a kind of music it had never heard before. The day of the masterclass arrived like a storm Lena had been hearing from far away. She woke early, long before the sun touched the town, her heart echoing with a nervous rhythm she couldn't control. Her fingers felt cold, her breath unsteady. She sat at the edge of her bed, hands resting on her lap, trying to calm the small hurricane swirling inside her. She kept telling herself, "It's just an audition," but it didn't feel like just anything. This was Adrian Cole, a name so big that even hearing it made people straighten their backs. This was the man whose music had once made her stop in the middle of a street because it felt like her heart recognized the sound before her mind did. Now she would stand in the same room with him. The school hall was buzzing. Long before the auditions began, Lena heard excited footsteps, chairs scraping the floor, students talking all at once. She walked slowly, her cane tapping softly, each tap echoing louder in her imagination than in reality. She could sense the room shift when she entered, the sudden pause in conversations, the half-hidden giggles, the whispers sliding behind her like shadows. But she kept walking until she found a chair at the edge of the room. Mrs. Carter soon sat beside her, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Just breathe, Lena," she murmured. "And remember, your music speaks louder than anything they can say." Lena nodded, even though fear still clung tightly to her. A few minutes later, the door opened, and the room filled with a wave of applause. Adrian Cole, the world-famous pianist, entered with confident footsteps that even Lena could recognize, steady, sharp, sure of who he was. His voice came next, smooth and controlled. "Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see what you young musicians can do." Students whispered, thrilled just to hear him speak. One by one, the auditions began. Lena listened carefully to each performance. Some students played confidently, some nervously, others stiffly as if the piano were a test instead of a friend. She admired their courage but noticed something strange. They all played from sheet music. She could hear the rustle of pages, the shifting of paper on the stand, and then she remembered she didn't have any sheet music. She had nothing but the melody in her heart. Her stomach twisted. Finally, a teacher called out, "Next, Lena Hart." The room fell into an unnatural, uncomfortable silence. Lena felt the air grow heavy. Someone whispered under their breath, "Why is she even here?" Another muttered, "This will be interesting." Lena stood with slow, careful movements. Mrs. Carter guided her gently to the center of the room where the piano waited. Her cane tapped like a nervous heartbeat against the floor. Adrian Cole stood near the piano, and when Lena approached, she felt his attention shift to her. She could almost feel him staring. Then he spoke, his voice carrying a cold edge. "Are you here to watch, young lady? We're only calling students who are auditioning." The whispering around her grew louder with excitement. Some students choked back laughter. Lena froze, heat rushing to her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but no words escaped. Mrs. Carter stepped forward quickly. "She is auditioning," she said, her voice firm. A short pause followed. Adrian let out a breath, half surprise, half disbelief. "She plays?" he asked, not bothering to lower his voice. Lena felt every word like a needle. Mrs. Carter replied calmly, "Yes, and she plays beautifully." Adrian didn't respond immediately. He seemed to hesitate before saying, "Very well. She can try." He made it sound like a favor, like a child being allowed to touch something fragile. Lena lowered her head. She could feel dozens of eyes staring at her. With trembling fingers, she reached for the piano, but before she could sit, Adrian added in a voice that cut her deeply, "Keep it short. Please. More giggles followed. Lena felt her throat tighten. She didn't know whether to sit or run. She didn't know if she could play anything at all now. Every cruel whisper she had ever heard came back to her at once. Then she felt a warm hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Carter. A soft voice whispered, "Don't let them silence you. Remember who you are when you touch those keys." Slowly, very slowly, Lena sat at the piano bench. Her hands hovered over the keys, shaking. She took a long breath, letting the familiar smell of old wood calm her. She pressed a single key, listening to the note echo in the silent room. Then another. The whispers faded. For the first time that morning, the room felt still. She was scared, humiliated, but she was also there. And she had something to say through her music, something more powerful than any words she could speak. And as her fingers settled fully on the keys, Lena realized something. She wasn't just playing for a pianist or for the students. She was playing for the only world she had ever truly seen, her world of sound. And in the next moment, she began to play. When Lena pressed the first few keys, the sounds trembled softly, almost as if they were as nervous as she was. The room remained painfully silent, filled with held breaths and curious stares. For a moment, Lena wondered if she should stop, if maybe Adrian Cole had been right, if maybe she didn't belong here. But then, something inside her shifted. It wasn't bravery, and it wasn't confidence. It was something better. Something familiar. It was the feeling she always had when she touched a piano. Home. She closed her eyes, not because she had no sight, but because she wanted to shut out fear and listen only to what mattered, sound. With a long, steady breath, her fingers moved again. This time, the notes were clearer, smoother, carrying a soft emotion that slowly echoed through the room. Lena didn't start with a famous piece. She didn't choose something difficult to impress people. Instead, she played something she had created herself, a melody born from the hundreds of afternoons she had spent alone in the music room. A melody shaped by her world of invisible colors and quiet feelings. It began gently, like a whisper blown into the wind. Each note fell softly, creating a delicate rhythm that felt like raindrops sliding down a window. She let her fingers glide from one key to the next, trusting her senses, trusting the vibrations under her fingertips, trusting the way her heart guided her through the music. The room began to change. The restless shifting of feet stopped. The whispering faded. Even the breathing around her slowed into silence. Lena didn't see any of this, but she felt it. Felt the way the air grew still. Felt the way people leaned forward, listening without realizing they were doing it. She played the melody she knew better than her own name. A melody that carried sadness and hope together. A melody that felt like walking alone through a world you cannot see, but still learning to find beauty in it. Halfway through the piece, her fear slipped away. Her body relaxed. Her shoulders dropped. Her hands softened, no longer shaking. Now she was only Lena, the real Lena, sharing something she had never shared with anyone except the piano. Behind her, Adrian Cole stood completely silent. His confident posture had changed. His arms, once crossed in impatience, slowly dropped at his sides. He wasn't expecting this, not from the blind girl he had judged the moment she walked into the room. He expected hesitation, clumsy mistakes, maybe a few broken notes. But what he heard was something he rarely heard anymore, even from professional musicians. Honesty. Her music didn't try to impress. It didn't try to shine. It simply spoke the truth. The last part of her melody lifted gently, like sunrise climbing over a quiet horizon. Then, with a soft trembling note, she ended the piece. Her hand stayed frozen above the keys for a few seconds, as if she were afraid to break the moment. The room remained silent. No one clapped. No one moved. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from judgment. It was the kind that arrives only when people witness something they don't know how to describe. Lena slowly lowered her hands. her heart pounding. She wasn't sure if people hated it or loved it. She only felt confused by the stillness around her. She turned slightly, unsure if she should stand up, unsure if the audition was over. Then someone inhaled sharply like a breath that had been trapped too long. A girl in the front row whispered, "That was beautiful." A boy beside her wiped his eyes before quickly pretending he wasn't crying. Even teachers shifted uncomfortably, trying to hide the shock on their faces. But the one who changed the most was Adrian. He stepped closer, his shoes making small, careful sounds against the wooden floor. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before, almost hesitant. "Did you compose that?" he asked. Lena nodded slightly, unsure if she should speak. Adrian let out a breath, a long, slow one, the kind people release when they realize they've made a mistake. "That," he said quietly, almost to himself, "was extraordinary." Lena blinked in surprise. Extraordinary? She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to feel. So she simply sat there, breathing softly, her hands resting on her lap. Mrs. Carter, in the back of the room, smiled through tears. She didn't bother to hide. The students who once whispered about Lena now stared in stunned silence. Their earlier laughs replaced with something new. Respect. And in that moment, though Lena couldn't see the faces around her, she felt everything change like a door opening inside a dark room, letting in a warm beam of light. This was the moment she had never dared to imagine. This was the moment that would change everything. Room felt different after Lena finished playing, so quiet that even the soft hum of the ceiling lights sounded loud. It was the kind of silence that comes after something meaningful, something that leaves people unsure how to return to normal. Lena couldn't see everyone staring at her, but she could feel the weight of their eyes, the way the air had shifted around her. It wasn't the heavy, sharp feeling of mockery she had known for years. This time it felt gentle, almost soft. She stood up carefully, her cane tapping once against the wooden floor. Her hands trembled, not from fear now, but from the strange, warm energy filling the room. She wondered if she had done something wrong. Maybe they were silent because they expected more. Maybe they were confused. Or maybe she had played too quietly. But before Lena could think any further, something unexpected happened. Someone clapped. Just one pair of hands, at first slow, steady, almost cautious. Then another joined. And another. The sound grew, spreading through the room like a wave rising from calm water. It wasn't the usual cheerful applause people gave without thinking. This one felt heavier, deeper, filled with emotion. Lena took a step back, overwhelmed. She had never imagined people would applaud her. For a moment she felt dizzy, caught between disbelief and the bright heat of happiness spreading through her chest. But the most surprising reaction came from the front of the room. Adrian Cole, the famous pianist who had doubted her, judged her, and spoken to her with sharp disbelief, stood completely still. His hands were not clapping. They hung at his sides, frozen. His expression, unseen by Lena, had changed completely. The calm confidence he always carried had slipped away. His eyes had softened, his eyebrows drawn slightly inward, as if he was trying to understand something he hadn't expected. He stepped closer to her, almost hesitant, and Lena heard the gentle shift of the wooden floor under his shoes. "Lena," he said quietly. She turned her head slightly toward his voice. She couldn't read his expression, but she could hear something new in his tone, something unsure, almost shaken. "How long have you been playing?" he asked. Lena hesitated. I don't know exactly. "A few years. I just practice a lot." "And you compose that yourself?" "Yes," Adrian exhaled slowly. Not because he was unimpressed, but because he was moved. Behind her, students who once whispered cruel things now leaned forward with awe. Lena could feel their attention differently now. It wasn't sharp and uncomfortable, it felt wide, open, like a space she was suddenly allowed to enter. But the true shift happened inside. Adrian himself, he had spent years performing on grand stages, receiving standing ovations, traveling the world. He had heard talented musicians everywhere. But there was something different about Lena's music, something raw, honest, and strangely powerful. Her melody didn't try to show off. It didn't try to imitate. It simply told the truth of her life, her silence, her loneliness, and her courage. He realized, with a strange ache in his chest, that he had made a mistake. A big one. He had misjudged her before she even played a single note. Mrs. Carter stepped forward, her voice warm but trembling slightly. "Lena has always had something special," she said. "She feels music in a way most of us don't." Adrian nodded slowly. He didn't argue this time. "Yes," he replied softly. "I can hear that." He faced the room and addressed the students. "Music isn't only about technique," he said. "It's not only about reading notes or playing fast." His eyes drifted briefly to Lena. "It's about feeling, expression, truth. And today, I heard something rare." Murmurs spread through the room, murmurs of surprise, of admiration, of realization. Lena stood quietly, unsure how to react. Compliments confused her. Praise felt strange. She didn't play to impress anyone. She played because she didn't know any other way to show the feelings buried deep in her heart. But the world had changed around her. For the first time, people weren't seeing a blind girl. They were seeing a musician. After a long moment, Adrian spoke again, his voice steady now. "Lena," he said, "I'd like to hear you play again, later, during the performance tonight." Lena's breath caught. She wasn't sure if she had heard him correctly. You want me to play?" She whispered. "Yes," he said. "On stage. With me." A soft gasp rose from the room. Lena's lips parted. Her heart beat wildly, filling her with a mix of shock, joy, and disbelief. She had dreamed of playing on a stage, but she never imagined an invitation like this. Adrian's voice softened. "If you agree, of course." Lena stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of the moment. Then slowly she nodded. I'd be honored." The room erupted into whispers again, but this time they carried admiration, wonder, and excitement. Lena couldn't see their expressions, but she didn't need to. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not by eyes, but by hearts. The rest of the school day passed in a strange blur for Lena. She walked through the hallways feeling as if the world had tilted slightly, changing its shape. People didn't push past her the way they usually did. They didn't whisper hurtful things. Instead, they whispered something new, something she had never heard in connection with her own name. "She's really good. I didn't know she could play like that." Did you see Adrian's face? He was shocked. Some spoke softly out of guilt, remembering their cruel words from before. Others spoke with genuine admiration. Lena didn't respond to any of it. She simply clutched her cane and moved slowly, her mind still wrapped in the sounds of her own performance. By the time the final bell rang, her legs felt weak. She found a quiet corner outside the school and sat on a bench, breathing in the cool afternoon air. Her hands rested on her knees, still tingling as if the piano keys had left their warmth behind. She couldn't believe it. She had been invited to perform with Adrian Cole, the world-famous pianist whose music had once made her heart pause. It felt like something from a dream she never dared to say out loud. But along with excitement, a heavy knot formed in her stomach. What if she wasn't good enough? What if tonight she made a mistake? What if Adrian regretted inviting her? The doubts crept in slowly, like shadows slipping under a door. Just then, she heard soft footsteps approaching. Mrs. Carter sat beside her and didn't speak at first. She simply placed a gentle hand on Lena's arm, offering silent comfort. After a moment, she said, "You're thinking too much, aren't you?" Lena nodded. I don't know if I'm ready. What if I disappoint him? What if everyone laughs? What if Mrs. Carter squeezed her hand? Lena, listen to me. You played today from your heart. That's why the room fell silent. That's why Adrian changed the way he looked at you. Not because you tried to be perfect, but because you were real. Lena swallowed the lump in her throat. You don't need to be perfect tonight, Mrs. Carter continued softly. You just need to be you. Those words settled slowly into Lena's chest, easing part of the fear inside her. That evening, the school auditorium filled quickly. Students, parents, teachers, and people from the town all came to watch Adrian Cole perform. The air buzzed with excitement. Lena waited backstage, listening to the crowd as they settled into their seats. She clutched the edge of her dress nervously. Adrian was nearby, preparing calmly. His presence felt different, now less distant, less cold. He approached Lena with careful steps, clearing his throat softly. Lena, he said, I wanted to speak with you before we go on. She turned her head toward the sound of his voice. Yes? Adrian paused briefly, as if choosing his words with care. About earlier, I owe you an apology. Lena's heart skipped. I misjudged you, he said quietly. I let my assumptions blind me far more than your lack of sight ever limits you. Your music showed me something I haven't felt in years. For that, I'm truly sorry. Lena felt warmth rise to her cheeks. She didn't know what to say. She simply nodded, accepting the apology not because he was famous, but because she felt he genuinely meant it. And Adrian added gently, I want you to know something important. What is it? You earned this stage. You're not here because of kindness or charity. You're here because your music deserves to be heard. Those words hit her deeper than anything else he'd said. The announcement for the performance echoed through the backstage speakers. Adrian offered his arm, and Lena carefully placed her hand on it. Together, they walked toward the bright lights of the stage. When they stepped out, the audience erupted in applause. Lena felt the sound wash over her, warm, powerful, alive. It wasn't like the shy applause from earlier. This was big. This was real. She stood beside the grand piano as Adrian addressed the crowd. Tonight, he said, I have the honor of sharing this stage with someone very special. A young musician who reminded me of the true meaning of music. The audience turned their attention to Lena. She may not see the world the way we do, Adrian continued, but she hears it more deeply than most of us ever will. A soft murmur of admiration filled the room. Lena took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly. But she wasn't scared now, not like before. Something inside her felt brighter, stronger. Tonight wasn't about proving anything. Tonight was about sharing her world with theirs. And as she prepared to sit at the grand piano, Lena knew that this moment, this turning point, would stay with her for the rest of her life. When Lena sat at the grand piano on that brightly lit stage, she felt the world grow completely still. She couldn't see the audience, the hundreds of eyes watching her, the glow of the lights, or the graceful shape of the piano. But she felt everything: the quiet breath of the hall, the soft rustle of people shifting in their seats, the warm presence of Adrian standing beside her. For a moment, Lena rested her hands gently on the keys. They were smoother than the old-school piano she practiced on every day. These keys felt alive, cold at first touch, but ready to transform her heartbeat into sound. She inhaled deeply. Then she began to play. The first note floated through the auditorium like a soft beam of light, warm and delicate. The crowd leaned in, listening with full attention. Lena didn't rush. She let the melody grow slowly, the way a sunrise stretches across the sky little by little. Her fingers glided with confidence she didn't know she had. She was no longer the quiet girl who hid in the music room. She was no longer the blind girl who students whispered about. She wasn't scared, she wasn't shy, she wasn't small. She was a musician. Her melody rose higher, full of emotion, loneliness, courage, discovery, hope. Every moment of her life, every quiet afternoon with the old piano, Every doubt and every whisper she endured gently flowed into the notes. Music spoke the things Lena had never been able to say out loud. The audience felt it. Some closed their eyes. Some held their breath. Some wiped away tears, not understanding why this young girl's music touched them so deeply, but knowing that it did. Halfway through the performance, Adrian joined her, playing alongside her with careful grace. But what surprised everyone, even Adrian himself, was that Lena didn't falter. She didn't lose her rhythm. She didn't shrink in fear. She matched him perfectly, as if she had been playing on grand stages her entire life. Their melodies danced together, his strong, powerful notes blending with her gentle, emotional ones. It was like two stories woven into one. A conversation without words. A bridge between two worlds. The crowd had never heard anything like it. When the final note echoed through the hall, Lena lifted her hands slowly, letting the sound fade into a silence so deep it felt sacred. For a moment, no one moved, no one dared break the magic. Then from somewhere in the audience came the first clap, then another, and another, until the entire hall burst into applause loud enough to shake the stage. People stood from their seats, cheering, shouting, whistling, crying. It was a standing ovation. For her, Lena sat frozen, overwhelmed. She couldn't see the applause, but she could feel it like a wave of warmth crashing over her, lifting her, holding her. Adrian stepped closer and gently touched her shoulder. "Listen," he whispered. She did, and she realized something she had never believed would happen in her life. The world was celebrating her. When the applause finally softened, Adrian walked to the microphone. His voice trembled not with fear, but with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "music is not about what your eyes can see. It is about what your heart can feel." He turned toward Lena. "Tonight, this young pianist reminded us of that truth. She taught me more in one melody than I've learned in years." The audience erupted in cheers again. Lena lowered her head, tears forming in the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from pure joy, from relief, from a dream finally coming alive. That night, videos of her performance were uploaded online. Within hours, they spread across the world. People everywhere watched the blind girl who played like she was speaking directly to the soul. Comments poured in admiration, inspiration, wonder. Reporters called her the girl who stunned the world. Musicians called her a miracle. Adrian called her a true artist. But Lena didn't care about the fame. When she went home that night, she sat on her small bed, touching her piano calloused fingertips gently. She smiled softly, letting the memory of the applause echo in her heart. She had always lived in darkness, but through music, she had created her own light, a light bright enough to be seen by the whole world, light that didn't need eyes, a light that came from within. And that night, Lena finally understood something beautiful. She had never been invisible. The world had simply taken time to listen.